Once you've decided you want to write a book, what is the best way to go about that process? So basically you're starting at zero and you have to get to between 30 and 40,000 words, I think you were saying, if it's a personal development nonfiction book. How would you break it down?
Yeah. So in its simplest form, and there's all kinds of structural things you can follow, right? Like you can take any kind of method and plunk it onto your process. And I could talk forever about it, so I won't. But I would say underneath all of that is really what I found is setting an intention and then having some reflection time. So by setting an intention, that might mean a full outline where you're really breaking down your processes that you want to convey, or the story in the right order, or you really know exactly what you want in each place and what that's going to mean when you sit down to write. It may not, though. It just may mean you going, I'm going to tell the story of how I went from here to here. I'm going to tell the story of how my clients go from here to here. I'm going to just walk back through my career and all of the things that I learned and lay it out there. That can be enough too, as long as it's a really solid intention. Like this is the purpose of the book that I'm writing. And this is, generally the constraints that I'm going to give myself. That's kind of all you need to really get started, is that, again, connecting with that why and setting a clear intention around it. And then letting yourself get into flow state and just get it out on paper, paper. Because if you try and refine as you go and have perfection as you go and like make a finished introduction and make a finished chapter 1, it's not gonna work. I see a lot of times, especially with people with daily writing practices, where we'll get like 6 chapters in and they're like, I think the purpose of this book is actually, and I'm like, no, buddy, it's too late. Dial it back. Come on. Can't cut, paste, rearrange. Can't do that. So have some intention and then get it all out on paper. It's okay if you wind up with the restarts or whatever, but having an intention in the beginning helps that be a little bit smoother. Get it all out on paper and then you can puzzle it around, rearrange it, edit it. And that's the reflection part. So you set your intention, you write, and then you sit back and go, what did I just write exactly? Is this the right journey for the reader? Did I lose them? If I put myself in the shoes of my reader, could they track with all of this? Did I really get vulnerable with that story and tell what actually happened, or did I skim the surface because it stung a little? But stepping back and going, what did I actually write? Does it accomplish my goals? Is it still resonant with my why? Has my intention changed and I need to adjust something? And then do it all again. Set a new intention or recommit to your original intention and go back through it. And then when you go back through it, step back and reflect. Basically do that ad nauseum. Literally, you will get nauseous and tired of it until it feels like it's going to be effective for your reader, until it feels like something that's going to resonate. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be, because you'll never think of it as perfect. But it doesn't need to be effective. And so as soon as you're like, you know what, I think this is going to be helpful for some people, then it's probably time to move on into the next production stages. So intention, reflection, repeat until it feels helpful.
I think that's really helpful. One way I found was just to actually get some stories down on paper and then go back and think about the outline. Because sometimes I think until you know what stories you're going to share or whether they're interesting, because I think telling the story to somebody is also quite an interesting thing, because then you're almost self-editing yourself to the highlights. And if you can make those highlights interesting, then I think you have a story to tell. I'm not saying that everybody doesn't have a story, but you do need to have some interesting elements or a bit of tension or setback, and you're overcoming those setbacks. And also, I think the point you're making about be honest, because if you have this very linear story, that's just nonsense. Everybody has setbacks. Wherever they were, maybe there was that bully at school, and whatever. You have to be reasonably honest about your story, and it just wasn't A to B. Whereas a lot of people, it's very you have this very circuitous, difficult story in your life. And I think that's part of the fun of the journey, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I wouldn't say that everybody doesn't have a story, but I think not everyone has a story yet.
Yeah.
Because until you've actually learned those lessons and had that growth, like you can't actually try and convey it to somebody else. You're not ready yet. So it'll come out surface level or shallow or whatever. Or the other thing that I find a lot is if you're not willing to admit it to people, especially if there's personal failings or things, mistakes that you made, it can be really difficult to actually admit that, oh, I learned this lesson when I really messed up. And that's hard. That goes back to that vulnerability. So yeah, it's it's okay if you get your stories out and then have to face down the lesson that you're trying to convey and deal with that. Do it before you put your book out, though.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Work it out, and then you'll be able to go, oh, there's those connections and that bully that I need to talk about and all of that.